Then a Lakota warrior found her crying in the storm after the pregnant widow lost everything. The morning began like any other, quiet and slow, the kind of morning that felt safe. The woman woke up before the sun, her hand resting gently on her belly. Life was growing inside her, and even though the days were hard, that small movement within her gave her strength. Her husband was already awake, preparing to leave for work. He smiled at her, the way he always did, a tired smile full of care and promise. Neither of them knew it would be the last time they shared that simple moment together. Their life was small, but it was honest. They did not have much money, but they had built their home with their own hands. Every wooden board, every small repair, carried a memory. The widow, though she was not a widow yet, believed that as long as they stayed together, they could face anything. The child on the way filled their future with hope. They spoke often about names, about how the baby would laugh, about the kind of life they wanted to give their child. That day, everything changed without warning. By the time the sun reached its highest point, dark news arrived like a sudden strike. Her husband never came back. A violent event on the road, something fast and unforgiving, took his life before she could say goodbye. When the message reached her, her mind refused to accept it. She stood still, unable to move, as if the world had stopped breathing. Her ears heard the words, but her heart could not understand them. People gathered around her, speaking softly, offering comfort, but their voices sounded distant. Her body shook, not from cold, but from disbelief. She pressed both hands to her stomach, as if protecting the child from the pain rushing through her chest. In that moment, the future they had planned disappeared. All the dreams they spoke about became silent. Grief settled into her like a heavy weight. The hours that followed passed slowly, each one harder than the last. By nightfall, her home felt empty in a way she had never known. His shoes were still by the door. His tools rested where he had left them. Every corner reminded her of what she had lost. Sleep did not come easily. When it did, it brought dreams filled with his voice and his smile, only to take them away again when she woke. As if loss was not enough, more trouble followed. Without her husband, the home they lived in was no longer safe. It belonged to others who did not care about her situation. Words were exchanged, cold and final. She was told she could not stay. The place that once felt like shelter now felt like a reminder that she no longer belonged. She packed what little she could carry. A small bag, a blanket, a few memories she could not leave behind. Every step she took through the house felt heavy. She touched the walls one last time, remembering laughter, quiet talks, and shared meals. And she closed the door, unsure if she would ever see that place again. Outside, the sky had begun to change. Clouds gathered slowly, dark and thick, stretching across the horizon. The air felt heavy, like it was holding something back. She walked forward anyway, not knowing where she was going, only knowing she could not stay. Her body was tired, and the weight of pregnancy made each step harder, but stopping felt impossible. As she walked, her thoughts moved between the past and the future. She remembered the way her husband promised to protect her and their child. She wondered how she could protect the life inside her now, when she could barely protect herself. Fear followed her like a shadow. Ire of hunger, fear of the cold, fear of what might happen if no one helped her. The first drops of rain fell quietly. She pulled the blanket closer around her shoulders, trying to keep warm. The wind picked up, brushing against her face and clothing. The road ahead was empty, stretching endlessly. No voices, no lights, just the sound of the wind and her own breathing. Her strength began to fade as the storm grew stronger. The rain fell harder, soaking her clothes and hair. Her feet ached. Her back burned with pain. She tried to focus on moving forward, one step at a time, but her body refused to listen. The world felt too big, too cruel, and she felt too small inside it. Standing there in the storm, she realized how completely alone she was. Her husband was gone. Her home was gone. The future she believed in had been torn apart. She sank to the ground, the rain washing over her face as tears mixed with it. She did not try to hold them back anymore. There was no one to see, no one to judge. She cried for the man she loved. She cried for the child who would grow up without a father. She cried for herself, for the strength she felt slipping away. The storm around her matched the storm inside her heart. Thunder rolled in the distance, deep and heavy, like the sound of grief itself. Even in that moment, her hand returned to her belly. The child moved slightly, a quiet reminder of life continuing despite everything. That small movement gave her just enough strength to breathe again. She whispered words of comfort, though her voice shook. She promised the child she would try, even if she did not know how. The rain did not stop. The wind did not soften. But somewhere beyond the storm, unseen and unknown, The path of her life was about to change. She did not know it yet, but this moment, her lowest point, was not the end of her story. It was only the beginning. And in the darkness of the storm, while she sat broken and exhausted, someone else was moving through the land. Someone whose path was slowly, quietly, drawing closer to hers. The rain continued without mercy. It fell hard and steady, soaking the ground and turning the path into thick mud. The woman struggled to stand again, her legs shaking from cold and exhaustion. Every part of her body felt heavy, as if the storm itself was pressing her down. She wiped her face with trembling hands, but the tears kept coming, mixing with the rain until she could no longer tell them apart. She forced herself to move, even though her strength was almost gone. Each step felt like a battle. Her clothes clung to her skin, cold and uncomfortable. The wind cut through her like a sharp blade, making her shiver. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to protect both her body and the child inside her. Her thoughts were slow now, foggy from tiredness and pain. As she walked, memories followed her closely. She remembered the sound of her husband's laughter, the way he used to speak about the future with hope in his eyes. He had promised to stand beside her always. That promise echoed in her mind, and the emptiness beside her felt deeper with every step. I would be so happy, she wondered, how life could change so fast, how everything solid could turn into nothing in a single day. The road became harder to see as the storm grew darker. Trees bent under the strong wind, their branches moving wildly. The sound of thunder rolled across the sky, loud and endless. Each crash made her heart jump. She felt small under the wide, angry sky, like she could disappear and no one would notice. Her body finally refused to go on. Her knees buckled, and she fell to the ground again. Mud covered her hands and clothes, but she did not care. She tried to push herself up, but her arms shook too much. Her breathing became fast and shallow. Fear filled her chest, sharp and painful. What if she could not stand again? What if this was where her journey ended? She leaned forward, resting her forehead on the ground. Her tears fell freely now. She cried out, not caring if anyone heard. The sound of her own voice surprised her. It was weak, broken, filled with pain. She cried for warmth. She cried for safety. She cried for someone, anyone, to see her and help her. The child inside her moved again, small but real. She gasped softly, one hand pressing to her belly. That tiny movement reminded her why she had to survive. Even if she felt empty and lost, she was not alone. Another life depended on her strength, even if that strength felt nearly gone. She sat back slowly, her back curved, her shoulders heavy. The rain ran down her face, her hair sticking to her cheeks. She looked around, but the world was blurred by water and darkness. There was no shelter in sight, no house, no fire. Only open land and endless rain. Time lost its meaning. Minutes felt like hours. The cold crept deeper into her bones. Her hands went numb. Her thoughts drifted in and out. She began to feel strange, light in her head, as if the world was slowly pulling away from her. She fought to stay awake, afraid of what might happen if she closed her eyes. Her mind returned to her husband once more. She imagined him standing beside her, telling her to be strong, telling her not to give up. She whispered his name into the storm, her voice almost silent under the sound of the rain. For a moment, it felt like he was near, like he was watching over her. That thought brought a small sense of comfort, even as her body continued to shake. The storm showed no kindness. The wind pushed against her, forcing her to lean forward. The rain hit her face, making it hard to breathe. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself, but it offered little protection now. Her teeth began to chatter. She felt weak, so weak that even crying took too much effort. At last, she stopped fighting. She sat still, her head bowed, her arms wrapped around her belly. Her breathing slowed. The fear faded, replaced by a deep, heavy tiredness. Her eyes closed for a moment, then opened again. She was afraid to sleep, but staying awake felt impossible. In that quiet moment, something inside her broke completely. Not just her strength, but her hope. She no longer tried to imagine a better future. She no longer tried to plan her next step. She simply existed in the storm, small and helpless, waiting for the rain to end or for something else to happen. She did not know how long she had been sitting there when she sensed movement nearby. At first, she thought it was only the wind, moving the grass and trees. She lifted her head slowly, her vision blurred. The rain made it hard to see, but she felt a presence, something different from the empty land around her. Her heart began to beat faster, fear rising again. Was someone there, or was her mind playing tricks on her? She tried to listen, but the storm was too loud. Her body tensed, her hand tightening around the edge of her blanket. She was too tired to run, too weak to defend herself. All she could do was sit there and wait, her heart pounding in her chest. Somewhere beyond the rain and darkness, footsteps moved closer, steady and calm. Not rushed, not careless. She could not see who it was, but she felt it clearly now. She was no longer alone in the storm, and though she did not know it yet, this moment when she had reached the very edge of her strength was about to change everything. The footsteps grew clearer, slow and careful, stopping a short distance away. The woman lifted her head with great effort. Rain still fell between her and the dark shape standing nearby, making it hard to see clearly. Her heart beat fast, not only with fear but also with uncertainty. She did not know if help had come or if danger was closer than ever. The figure did not rush toward her. Instead, he stood still, as if giving her space. The wind moved his clothing, and rain rolled off his shoulders. He was tall and strong, but his posture was calm, not threatening. After a moment, he lowered himself slightly, making himself appear less frightening. His movements were slow, thoughtful, guided by care rather than force. He spoke, his voice deep but gentle. The words were quiet, meant to carry comfort, not command. Though his language was unfamiliar to her ears, his tone told her enough. He meant no harm. She tried to answer but found her voice weak. Only a soft sound escaped her lips. Her body trembled, not from fear alone, but from cold and exhaustion. She held her belly with one hand, a silent sign of her condition. The man noticed at once. His eyes softened, and he nodded slightly, as if understanding her situation without needing more words. He stepped closer, but not too close. Slowly, he removed a covering from his shoulders and held it out toward her, stopping again to let her choose. She hesitated only a moment before reaching for it. Her fingers were numb, but she managed to pull it around herself. Warmth, small but real, wrapped around her, and she let out a quiet breath she did not realize she had been holding. The man glanced around, scanning the land as if checking for danger or shelter. His face showed focus and awareness. He had been traveling through the storm, used to the harsh weather and the long paths of the land. Finding her here, broken and alone, was not something he expected, but it was something he could not ignore. He pointed gently toward a group of trees not far away. They stood closer together, their thick branches offering some protection from the rain. He spoke again, using simple sounds and gestures to explain. She understood enough. He wanted her to move there, to find shelter from the storm. She nodded slowly, though standing felt like an impossible task. When she tried to rise, her legs failed her. She gasped softly as she sank back down. Without hesitation, the man stepped forward, offering his arm. He did not grab her or pull her. He simply waited, steady and patient. With effort and his quiet support, she managed to stand. Her body leaned heavily against him, though she tried to hold herself up. He adjusted his stance to keep her balanced, strong and unmoving like the land itself. Together, step by step, they moved toward the trees. Each step was slow. Mud pulled at her feet, and pain ran through her back and legs. She focused on breathing, on not falling again. The man matched her pace perfectly, never pushing, never rushing. Rain continued to fall, but under the trees it softened slightly. The wind calmed just enough to let her breathe more easily. Beneath the trees, the ground was firmer. The man guided her to a spot near the thickest trunk, where the branches blocked much of the rain. He helped her sit, placing her gently against the tree. Then he gathered fallen branches and leaves, arranging them carefully to create a small barrier between her and the wind. She watched him with tired eyes, barely able to keep them open. Every movement he made was careful, respectful. He never spoke loudly, never acted without thinking. She felt something she had not felt since her husband died. Safety. When he returned to her side, he crouched nearby, keeping enough distance to respect her space. He offered her a small container. Inside was water. Her hands shook as she took it, but she managed to drink slowly. The cool liquid refreshed her dry throat and cleared her head just enough to bring her back from the edge of weakness. She whispered a quiet thank you, unsure if he understood the words, but he understood the feeling. He nodded once, his eyes steady and kind. For a while, neither of them spoke. The storm continued around them, but it no longer felt as powerful. The woman leaned back against the tree, holding the covering tightly around her. Her breathing steadied. Her body was still cold and sore, but she was no longer fighting alone. The man finally spoke again, pointing to himself and saying his name. She tried to repeat it, her voice soft and unsure. Then she pointed to herself and said her own name. A small connection formed between them, simple but meaningful. He noticed her shaking, and started a small fire using dry materials he had protected during his journey. Soon, gentle warmth filled the space between them. The light from the fire reflected in his eyes, showing a face marked by experience, loss, and strength. This was someone who had walked long paths and carried heavy memories. As warmth returned to her body, her thoughts cleared slightly. She looked down at her belly, feeling the child move once more. Tears filled her eyes again, but these were different. These tears carried relief, not just pain. The man followed her gaze and nodded again, as if silently promising that she and the child would not be left alone tonight. The storm slowly began to lose its strength. Rain softened, thunder faded into the distance, and the wind became calmer. Under the trees, beside the fire, the woman rested, her body finally allowed to recover. She was still afraid of what tomorrow might bring, but for the first time since losing everything, she felt a small spark of hope. She did not know where this path would lead. She did not know how long this stranger would remain by her side. But she knew one thing with certainty. If he had not found her in the storm, she might not have survived the night. And as the fire burned quietly and the rain slowly eased, two lives shaped by loss and hardship sat side by side, unaware that this meeting would change both of their paths in ways neither of them could yet imagine. Morning arrived slowly, as if the land itself was tired from the long night. The rain had stopped, leaving behind cool air and the quiet sound of water dripping from leaves. Soft light filtered through the trees, touching the ground where the woman sat wrapped in warmth. The small fire had burned down to glowing embers, and thin smoke rose gently into the sky. She opened her eyes and took a deep breath. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. Then the memories returned. The storm, the pain, the fear. She shifted slightly and felt the covering still around her shoulders. Warmth remained in her body, and that surprised her. Slowly she looked around. The man was nearby, awake and watchful. He had added more wood to the fire before dawn and kept it alive through the night. He sat quietly, facing the land, alert but calm. When he noticed her stirring, he turned his head and gave a small nod. It was not a smile, but it carried kindness. She tried to sit up straighter. Her body still ached, but the sharp pain had softened. The cold no longer ruled her bones. She felt tired, deeply tired, yet stronger than she had felt the night before. She placed one hand on her belly, comforted by the gentle movement inside. Life was still there, still fighting. The man handed her a small piece of food. It was simple, but it smelled warm and steady. She hesitated, then accepted it with both hands. As she ate slowly, strength returned bit by bit. Each breath felt easier. Each moment felt less heavy. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the land wake up. Birds called softly from the trees. The wind moved gently through the leaves, no longer harsh or angry. The storm felt far away now, like a bad memory fading with the night. When she finished eating, she looked at the man and finally spoke more than a whisper. Her voice was quiet but steady. She thanked him again, using simple words. He listened carefully, even if he did not understand every sound. The meaning was clear. He responded with calm gestures and few words, choosing them carefully. He explained, slowly and simply, that he was traveling back to his people. The path was long, but safe. He pointed in the direction he planned to go, then looked at her, waiting. She understood what he was offering without him saying it directly. He was asking if she would come with him, at least for a while. The thought made her heart tighten with fear and hope at the same time. Trust did not come easily anymore. She had lost too much. She looked down at the ground, thinking. She had nowhere to go. No home. No family nearby. Only an uncertain road filled with danger and pain. She then looked at the man again. He had shown her respect. He had helped her without asking for anything. He had stayed through the night to protect her and her child. Slowly, she nodded. They prepared to leave once the sun climbed higher. The man helped her stand and adjusted her load so it was lighter. He walked beside her, matching her pace, always aware of her condition. He showed her where to step, where the ground was firm, where to avoid deep mud or sharp stones. As they traveled, the land opened around them. Wide spaces stretched toward the horizon. The woman felt small but not lost. With each step, she felt a little stronger. Her body still needed rest, but her spirit was no longer broken. They spoke as they walked, using simple words and gestures. She told him about her husband, about the life they had planned, about the child she carried. Speaking the truth out loud was painful, but it also brought relief. The man listened without interrupting. His face showed understanding, not pity. In return, he shared pieces of his own story. He had known loss too. People he cared for were gone. Paths he once walked were no longer open to him. He carried his memories quietly, like a weight he had learned to live with. By midday, they reached a place where the land felt different. There were signs of life, carefully placed markings, paths known only to those who lived close to the earth. The man explained that his people were not far now. Fear returned to her chest. She did not know what awaited her there. Would she be welcome? Would they turn her away? She tightened her grip on the covering around her shoulders, her thoughts racing. The man noticed her unease. He stopped walking and turned to face her. He spoke gently, placing one hand over his heart, then gesturing toward the path ahead. His eyes held calm certainty. He was telling her she would be safe, that no harm would come to her or her child. They continued on. As the sun began to lower, they reached the edge of a small settlement. Smoke rose from cooking fires. People moved calmly, working together, their voices low and steady. When they noticed the man, they greeted him with respect. Their eyes then turned to the woman, curious but not cold. The man spoke to them, explaining her situation in his own language. The woman stood quietly, holding herself steady. She felt exposed, unsure, but she did not look away. She had nothing to hide. After a short moment, one of the women stepped forward. Her face was lined with age and wisdom. She looked at the woman's belly, then into her eyes. Slowly, she nodded. The woman felt tears rise again, but she held them back. She was guided toward a warm place, given water, food, and a place to rest. Gentle hands helped her sit. Voices around her were calm, steady, not rushed. As she lay back and closed her eyes, exhaustion finally claimed her. But this time, sleep came without fear. She knew she was not alone anymore. The man stood nearby, watching quietly. He had fulfilled his duty, not only as a warrior but as a human being. Yet something deeper had formed, a bond shaped by loss, strength, and shared silence. As the sun set over the land, casting long shadows across the ground, the woman rested, safe for the first time since everything had fallen apart. Her journey was far from over, but she was no longer walking it alone. And in that shared space of quiet recovery, two broken paths continued forward, now moving in the same direction. Days passed gently, one after another, each one helping the woman feel a little more whole. Life among the people moved at a calm and steady pace. Mornings began with soft light and quiet work. Evenings ended with shared food and low voices around warm fires. No one rushed her. No one demanded answers. She was allowed to heal in her own time. Her body slowly recovered. The cold left her bones. Strength returned to her legs. The child inside her grew stronger too, moving often, reminding her that life was still pushing forward. Each time she felt that movement, she placed her hand on her belly and breathed deeply. Fear still lived inside her, but it no longer controlled her. The women of the community watched over her closely. They showed her how to rest properly, how to eat what would help her body, how to move without pain. They spoke to her gently, sometimes with words, sometimes with smiles and quiet actions. Even when language failed, kindness did not. At night, when the world grew quiet, memories returned. She thought of her husband often. She missed him in ways that words could not explain. Some nights tears came again, but now she did not cry alone in the dark. Someone was always nearby. Someone always noticed. The man who had found her in the storm kept his distance at first, giving her space and respect. He checked on her quietly, making sure she had what she needed. Their eyes met often, and in those moments, understanding passed between them without words. They had both walked through loss. They both knew what it meant to keep going when the heart was tired. As weeks passed, she began to help in small ways, folding items, carrying light things, sitting with others, and listening to their stories. Her presence slowly became a part of the daily rhythm. She was no longer just a guest. She was someone they cared for. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in soft colors, she sat alone, watching the land stretch endlessly ahead. She realized something had changed inside her. The sharp pain of loss had softened into something quieter. It was still there, but it no longer stopped her from breathing, from hoping. The man joined her, sitting a short distance away. For a long moment, neither spoke. The wind moved gently between them, carrying the smell of earth and fire. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady but honest. She told him she was afraid of the future, afraid of raising a child without the life she once dreamed of. He listened closely. Then he spoke, slowly and clearly. He told her that strength did not always look like fighting or standing tall. Sometimes strength was waking up each day and choosing to keep going. Sometimes it was accepting help. Sometimes it was trusting again. His words stayed with her long after the night ended. When the time came for the child to be born, the community gathered around her with care and patience. The women stayed close, guiding her through the long hours. She was afraid, but she was not alone. Hands held hers. Voices encouraged her. She focused on breathing, on the life she was bringing into the world. When the child finally arrived, a soft cry filled the space. Tears streamed down her face, not from pain, but from overwhelming relief and love. She held the child close, feeling warmth and life against her chest. In that moment, the past and the future met. Loss and hope stood side by side. The man stood nearby, watching quietly. When she looked up at him, he nodded, his eyes filled with respect. He saw not a broken woman, but a strong mother. Someone who had survived the storm and still carried light within her. In the days that followed, she learned how to care for her child with the help of those around her. She learned new ways of living, new traditions, new meanings of family. The pain of her past never fully left, but it no longer defined her. She began to smile again. Small smiles at first, then real ones. One morning as she walked across the land with her child held close, she realized something important. She had lost everything once. But she had also found something unexpected. Kindness where she least expected it. Strength she did not know she had, and a future that, while different, was still full of meaning. The storm that nearly ended her life had also led her to a new beginning, and though she would always remember the night she cried alone in the rain, she would also remember the hand that reached out to her, the fire that warmed her, and the people who helped her stand again. Her story was no longer just about loss. It was about survival. It was about compassion. It was about finding light even when the sky is darkest. And as she held her child and looked ahead, she knew one thing with certainty. She had not been saved by strength alone, but by humanity.